The Philadelphia Weekly contends that Dr. Dyson is reshaping what it means to be a public intellectual by becoming the most visible black academic of his time.
I want to thank, is this on? I want to thank, okay. All black people live under suspicion. Trayvon Martin is but the most ready and apt metaphor for the suspicion to which we are subject. Black humanity has been suspected from the beginning of our sojourn in American society. I don't need to give a history lesson about that. The great Thomas Jefferson, the architect of Monticello and the Declaration of Independence, also wrote notes on Virginia, where he questioned the cerebral abilities and the intellectual acuity and the reason of black people, even as at night, retiring from his study, engaged in relations with a young woman whose loins trapped his logic. So that the reality of our humanity being under suspicion is critical as the backdrop to understand the unfolding and evolving perception of black people in America. Our humanity has been questioned and our intelligence has been questioned. As a result of that, black teens inherit a culture where the suspicion and skepticism about their humanity and their intelligence are part and parcel of what we deal with on the daily. This is why, for instance, to echo Mr. Johns, we not only talk about black male stereotypes, we talk about black female stereotypes, because had Rachel Jeantel been believed, had the stereotypical representation that articulates her as somehow subhuman, and not just from white Americans, but black too, skeptical about what she is, speaking 3 languages, perhaps her testimony would have been believed and the outcome of the trial could have been shaped, because black women are under vicious assault as well. And as a result of that, mothers mired in poverty help young black men come to birth, and both of them receive the calumny and the slander of this culture. The educational system into which they are thrust expels them at a rate 2.5 times greater than their white peers. So you're in school and you get kicked out for stuff that your white peers don't. Not only that, they are subject to detention and also put in special education programs that target them specifically as being less capable intellectually. What happens then is that they are also subject to the criminal justice system through nonviolent drug offenses. Even though the self-reporting of young white people suggests they do drugs about the same rate, if not a little bit more, than do black and other kids. So the point is that white kids are doing drugs in the same way black kids are, but white kids are not being put in jail because they are not suspected, but because they are not viewed as likely to engage in that kind of behavior, they are not profiled. And so young black men, teens in general, are profiled, not just by the police department when they go into stores. Retail profile, and you ain't got to be a teen to be subject to that. I got a black card and yet I'm profiled. The disproportionate number of black males who are put in the criminal justice system suggests to us that there is a targeting of African American men, particularly teens, beginning in the 14, 15, 16-year age range, that makes them subject to adult penalties in the criminal justice system. Many of these kids are tried as adults, and the book, so to speak, of the law is thrown against them, even for first-time offenses. And then even more broadly, stereotypes of black male and youth identity. We could have an empirical crush to verify the assault of the state upon vulnerable black people, but I want to weave a narrative and tell a story to make you feel the compelling character of the assault on young black teens. The reality is these stereotypes are out there. Even noted Washington Post columnists say that, let's be honest, the hoodie is the uniform of the criminal. Not for Mark Zuckerberg, not for Bill O'Reilly, not for Gerardo, all of whom, with the exception of Mr. Zuckerberg, have assaulted black people and black teens for being engaged in the self-perpetuation of a legacy of assault upon them because of the clothing they wear. So that this sartorial profiling, this clothing profiling, suggests that black people can't even dress with the same kind of freedom that our white peers do. And in this case, young black teens can't, because they will be automatically assumed to be a thug. Now, some people say, well, it's your problem. It's hip-hop culture. Hip-hop created this. Really? So excuse me, that's not the case. Now, has some element of hip-hop culture glorified and reinforced the devaluing of black life? Of course it has. But it's also spoken against it. Tupac said just the other day, I got lynched by some crooked cops, and to this day, them same cops on the beat getting major pay, but when I get my check, they taking tax out, so we paying the cops to knock the blacks out. Jay-Z said, God forgive me for my brash delivery, but I remember vividly what these streets did to me. Picture me allowing these clowns to nitpick at me, portray me like a pickaninny. So they are combating the vicious misrepresentation of black masculine identity by resorting to the very violence that is critical to American culture and American identity, and the sense of machismo that young black people appropriate has been given to them by a culture that creates laws like stand your ground, and that creates a gun industry that is obsessed to a nearly erotic intensity with guns as the manifestation of their manhood. They ain't invented the game, they playing it in their own way. So the reality is, how do we deal with the stereotypical representations of young black people? And now our friends on the right suggest it's black on black crime. Where you been? We've been talking about that. When Newtown happens, cameras are there. When Aurora happens, cameras are there. When Chicago happens, cameras are not there. But now we pathologize those young black people. And by the way, black people have been marching from time immemorial against the vicious legacy of white supremacy that occupies black minds, that leads us to kill each other, to hate each other, to despise the very presence that we represent. And how do we do that? We got to stop demonizing and stigmatizing our children. We've got to create alternative structures to admit multiple forms of learning. People learn in multiple ways. I mean, Jay-Z is a high school graduate. Tupac dropped out. Nas, 8th grade dropout. Yet these are rhetorical geniuses. Who's wrong, the school or them? We are not here. We are not here to have affirmative action for thugs, so to speak. We're here to say that everybody doing it, everybody ought to be taken in the same way to jail.